Hi, my name is Sarah Lajanovic, and for my creative process lens presentation, I chose the artist Tracey Emin and the lens of mental health. The reason I chose this lens is because mental health is something that personally affects my everyday life, and I wanted to explore how an artist can take something internal and express it visually through their work. And the reason this is so personal to me is because mental health doesn't always show up in obvious ways. For someone like myself, it's more internal, like anxiety, overthinking, and emotional exhaustion. I tend to constantly overanalyze situations, even small ones, and I find myself needing reassurance just to feel okay. So even when things seem fine on the outside, internally it can feel extremely overwhelming. That's why I connected to Tracy Emin's work because she doesn't hide those kinds of feelings. She expresses them openly. And for people who struggle with mental health, this is a really big deal because it makes you feel like you're less alone and this is real life that people do deal with and you're not the only one, which is why I really connected with her work. So, some artist background information. Tracey Emin is a British contemporary artist known for using her personal life as the main subject of her work. She was born in 1963 in London and became part of the Young British Artist movement, which focused on bold, unconventional, and often controversial art. What makes her work stand out is how autobiographical it is. Instead of separating her life from her art, she uses her own experiences, emotions, and struggles as the foundation. Her style is very raw and emotional, which connects directly to the lens of mental health. Emin's work has been exhibited internationally, including at Tate Britain, which is one of the most well known art institutions. She was also nominated for the Turner Prize in 1999, which is one of the most prestigious awards in contemporary art. This level of recognition shows that her work is not just personal, but also critically respected, even though it can be uncomfortable or controversial to many. So, this is one of her most known works. It's called My Bed, and it was created in 1998. So, this piece is an actual bed, along with personal items surrounding it, exactly as they were during a difficult time in her life. Instead of creating something traditionally artistic or aesthetic, she presents a real moment from her life, which makes the work feel very honest and unfiltered. So, what makes this piece powerful is how it was created. Instead of using traditional materials like paint or sculpture, Edmund uses real life objects directly from her environment. Nothing is cleaned or arranged to look better. The space is completely unedited, which feels reflects authenticity. By turning her personal space into art, she removes the boundary between private life and public experience, making something very personal visible to everyone. This artwork connects directly to mental health, especially depression. The mess and lack of structure in the space reflect emotional exhaustion and loss of control, which is common in mental health struggles. It also shows isolation since the space feels very personal and empty. Instead of hiding these experiences, she makes them visible, which forces the viewer to confront what mental health can actually look like. So, in addition to that, Tracy Emin also creates neon text pieces. These work these works use short phrases that come directly from her thoughts and emotions. Even though the phrases are simple, they feel very personal, almost like reading into someone's private thoughts. So, I chose the I know piece, and I chose this because the repetition of this phrase feels like a thought that keeps looping in your mind, which is something I relate to personally. And it almost sounds like someone trying to convince themselves of something but not fully believing it. This reflects how overthinking can feel, where your mind keeps returning to the same thought without finding resolution. So, for the creative lens process, Um, this slide represents how Tracy Emin's creative process connects directly to the lens of mental health. In this piece, repetition is not just a visual choice, it represents overthinking and how thoughts can loop in your mind. The phrase I know, repeated multiple times, feels like someone trying to convince themselves of something. She takes something very personal, like an internal thought, and makes it public by turning it into a visual form through neon text. This shows how her process is not separate from the meaning. The way she creates the work is what communicates the experience of mental health. So, why this lens matters today? The lens matters today because mental health affects how people experience everyday life, even if it's not always visible. For me, overthinking and anxiety can feel like a constant. For as long as I can remember, I have struggled with this, and my mind is always trying to process something, even when something is actually wrong. And there's a lot of pressure today to have clarity and certainty, especially in relationships, school, and the future, which can make these thoughts even stronger and harder to deal with. So, even though mental health is talked about a lot more nowadays, a lot of these experiences are still internal and hidden. That's why this lens is extremely important to me because it brings attention to what people are actually feeling, not just what they show. So, my first question for you guys is, do you believe that repetitive thoughts shape how we experience reality even when nothing is actually happening? And then my second question I have for everyone is, why do people hide their mental struggles instead of expressing them openly like Tracey Emin? So, these are my sources for this presentation, and I hope everyone enjoyed and learned something new out of this. Thank you.